Hey boys and girls, welcome to another super exciting, outrageous toy review. Today, I want to talk about vintage G.I. Joe figures from the 80s and 90s, and specifically about their file cards. So originally, when these G.I. Joe figures were scaled down to 3 3/4 inch size, they all came with a little bio card, a little file card, a dossier on the back of their package that told you about the character. They have their role or their skill, like their unit role, fighter pilot, codename Ace, their real name, their serial numbers, military specialities, their birthplace, their rank, and a little bit about them. These are what really made the small G.I. Joes different from the 12-inch action figures, the original G.I. Joes. Original G.I. Joes, for the most part, were just generic. It was just a soldier, and you could dress up in whatever gear you wanted and play out whatever adventure you wanted. Whereas the real American Hero Joes became a unit, with each guy being his own character and each one being unique, which gave life to a cartoon and a comic book and later on some movies. It's a very different scenario. Anyway, the file cards are such a cool part of G.I. Joe, and I've been saving them since I was a little kid. My mom painstakingly cut out hundreds of them for me when I was a kid. I still collect them when I go to toy shows. I trade them with people, and I just really enjoy them. And so they were the only way to really learn about G.I. Joe characters. If they weren't in the cartoon show, or you hadn't read an issue of the comic with that character in it, the file card was the best way to find out about them. So when I would get a new package for Christmas or my birthday when I was little, before I could read, I would ask my mom or my dad to read me the file card. And that would tell me about the character, and I would find out that this guy was cool-headed or clumsy or didn't like the cold or whatever his character, traits were. And that helped impact the way I played. It made certain characters more interesting than others, and I really enjoyed the file cards. So, fast forward to 1997. We got the internet, and one of the first things I did was look up G.I. Joe and Star Wars on the internet. And for some reason, I was convinced my parents were not going to continue to pay for the internet for very long. So I wanted to, save some of the most important things I found on the internet. And two websites I found related to G.I. Joe were the G.I. Joe headquarters and the G.I. Joe archives. Now, these two sites later merged with a third site to become yojo.com, which if you're into G.I. Joes, you pretty much have to know about yojo.com. But one of the sites had file cards scanned on it, and the other one had the action figures scanned on it. And they were amazing resources. I printed out pages from the site that had the figures on it, of figures that I really, really wanted, that I'd never really seen, rarer figures, like 1985 Snake Eyes, who had wanted my whole life but never saw at retail. And then the file cards. I really wanted to know everything about every G.I. Joe, including the ones I never had. So I started, year by year, printing out file cards that I didn't have. Okay, here's the real file cards. Nice and stiff. Printouts. So, over time, as my collection of file cards has grown, and my original file card collection started in a very small file box, then I found this one at a thrift store, which opens sideways and has room for way more cards. I expanded this box. Then I retired the little first one I had, expanded into this one, and now I have this one. So I have 3 boxes of file cards, and I don't own every file card from the original run. I'm missing quite a few. I have a lot from the early years, but in the 90s it gets a little spotty, my collection. But I started on the website printing out file cards from 1982. So here's Steeler. Here's Grand Slam. There's a little later, there's Heavy Metal. Here's Duke. Hawk. Tan Clutch. Baroness. Major Blood. Strato Viper. Backblast. Armadillo. Don't tell my mom. Paying for the internet. She didn't like us using the color ink too much, so don't let her know that in 1997 or 1998 I printed out a whole lot of paper file cards. it wouldn't be until much later that we got a copy of The Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe. And I'm trying to find a copyright on this. This came out in 2005. Right, okay, so yeah, so a lot later. This is post-college. So this was like 9th grade in high school, maybe middle school. This was after college that I was able to get this book. And this book doesn't have the file cards reprinted in it, but it does tell you a little bit about the characters. And this has it's a great checklist. It shows you all the characters. The websites like yojo.com was my checklist. That's how I knew which Joes I was trying to get as I was trying to collect them. I was memorizing, which version was which, and just facts, everything I could about G.I. Joe, because I'm just super passionate about it. I love G.I. Joe. So anyway, I've been cleaning up and organizing stuff a bunch lately, sorting some Joes and accessories I picked up, and I've been putting away some file cards. And looking at this pile of paper file cards that I've replaced with real ones now is just kind of making me laugh, and I wanted to share with you guys the story of my printout file cards. There's still some in here. If I pull out some file cards here, let me see how long it would take me to get to the first paper one. I don't know if this interests you guys. Ace, I got 2 variations of that one. Ace, Airborne, Airtight, Alpine, Ambush, Major Altitude, Armadillo, that one just got replaced. Oh, and then Avalanche, printed. Alright, so there's a lot of them in here, but it's slowly slimming down. And I never finished printing all of them. It's not like I printed every single year. But I printed probably through 88, any ones I didn't have. And I've been slowly replacing them over the years. So, anyway, I hope you found this interesting. A little look back on the world of G.I. Joe collecting before Mark Bellomo's Ultimate Guide, in the early days of the internet, when information was a little spotty. And leave me a comment down below about your collecting history and how you got information in the early days of the internet. Did you create a website? Did you archive information? I know I worked on a website for a comic book author and archived all kinds of information about his works. So it just makes it, it's just fun to hear the stories about the old days and collecting information. I didn't mention that these file cards were pretty much all written by Larry Hama, all the early file cards anyway. Eventually, they were written by an in-house person at Hasbro. But the early file cards, the first, I don't know, through 1990 at least, were written by Larry Hama, who wrote the file cards. He wrote the comic book. He's an amazing comic book author, and he is the reason that G.I. Joe has so much character. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos.